Hi everybody, and welcome to the Soul Booth, officially. This is my beautiful friend Anne Berubé, and I couldn't imagine having anyone else here for my very first episode, so thank you.
Nancy, it's so good to be here. It feels amazing to be here.
So I've never, I have introduced you before, but only on stage. And today I'm going to say that apart from being a beautiful human being, you are a trained shaman, a spiritual coach, and an author. And I've never introduced you as an author before because this is a new thing.
Yes, it's brand new. It's been a long time coming, and I'm so excited about it, Nancy. This is, it's like my baby. It's something that I feel like it's a dream come true. So, yeah, the book is called Be, Feel, Think, Do, and it's a mouthful.
I like that. You almost say it with your French accent. It almost sounds like it's one flowing French word. Be, feel, think, do.
Yes.
I like that.
Yes.
And we have a bit of a history. I've been along for the ride a bit on this, and so I am so excited. It comes out in May.
Yes, May 9th, 2017. And yes, it's been a heart project and something that I've been working on, I think, since 2009. And really, Wayne Dyer, who was a mutual friend of ours, is a big part in this happening. The inspiration to write the book came from him and his teachings. And my ability to bring it out into the world really could not have happened without his support. So very grateful for his presence and his teachings and what he brought to the world and continues to bring to the world, to us today.
Well, I think it's generous of you to say he was a mutual friend. It's not entirely accurate, but I was fortunate that you introduced me to him, and I was able to travel with you and introduce him. Anne and her husband Paul were, I think, his favorite producers, probably on the planet, but certainly in Canada. And so when they did shows in Canada on his last tour, I Am Light, I was able to go to Montreal and Moncton and introduce him and Anne, and that was such a gift and a thrill for me. And then Anne and I traveled to Hawaii. It was sort of her thank you to me. She took me along to a writer's workshop in Hawaii, which Wayne was anchoring, and we had dinner both nights we were there with Wayne and a really interesting group of people from Hay House. And it was a sort of magic weekend, and at the very end of the weekend, I was at the airport because I was flying back one day early, and it was late at night, and my phone rang, and my heart sort of started to beat because I thought, oh, it's the middle of the night at home, what's going on? And it was Anne saying, Nancy, and I thought, oh, something is going on. Her energy, her excitement was incredible and palpable over the phone. And I said, what's going on? And she said, I just talked to Wayne. Wayne just told me they're going to publish my book. Hay House is publishing my book. And I could still feel how excited you were. And I was like, well, of course they're publishing your book. Wayne loves you like a daughter. So that's more the truth. He was a mutual friend, but he really loved Anne like a daughter, I think.
Oh, I talk a lot about that magical time in Hawaii, and that year after that, because he passed away 2 months after our time in Maui with him, and our connection with him just grew stronger. So when I say our connection, I mean anybody who knows his work or have met him or have read his book they have access to him now, even though he's passed away. His intelligence, his gifts, his capacity to reach and connect is magnified by his passing. And yes, but that was a very special time, and you were pretty certain this was going to happen, but for me, it was so surreal, Nancy, so surreal. It's one of those things you dream of, and you don't know if it's ever going to happen. And there was my ability to share my story and my work with a larger audience.
And for me, what's really extraordinary and exciting is that you're not just sharing your story, you're sharing light. And you're sharing your concept of be, feel, think, do, which we're going to get into now, is something that will help I just think it will help so many people. And that's so amazing to be at the front of that journey and looking ahead going, wow, you know, who knows where it will go.
I know. And it's a progression that came out of my journey of healing. So I had a car accident when I was 23 years old. And in the car wreck, my lungs had collapsed and my liver had lacerated in half, and I was unconscious. And I had an experience that was very mystical, something very unique, different, never experienced anything like that before. But I connected with my true self, an authentic self, and this life that I came here to live, but I wasn't living. So I saw it like a movie in front of my mind's eyes, Nancy. But more importantly, I felt it. I felt it in my heart. I felt the joy, the peace, the freedom that I was not experiencing in my life at the time. And so my work in the last 15 years has been to bridge those two realities. This experience I had in the car in my real life, my day-to-day reality. And that's where Be, Feel, Think, Do came from. It came from a progression of how to engage our moment to moment in a way that brings us more sustainable happiness and inner peace and inner freedom, and a capacity to engage our purpose, our higher calling, like why we're here, why we came.
Beautiful. So what I loved about reading the story, and I already knew it, and there was still some sense of magic or suspense in it for me as I was reading the story part of your book. And I loved it. And you were in your early 20s, you were in a space, I would say, that a lot of people are in the world all the time. They're busy, they are goal-oriented, they are living life thinking of financial goals and you know, milestones and so on. And I think when you had your moment of clarity, if that's what we can call it, all of that, you just sort of took the veil, and it was like moving the curtain and going, oh, that's not what it's about.
Exactly. And at the time it was traumatic. It was, you know, I almost died, and I didn't see the gift in it. But as the years you know, went by after, I realized that it was such a gift to be able to see through that veil and to connect with something deeper that I was having a really hard time connecting with, because my mind, my intellect, my ego was leading the way. It was my comfort zone. It was my way to control and manage my world so that I wouldn't get hurt, so I wouldn't feel too much.
And you were a high achiever.
Oh yes, I was. Achieving was my identity. It was how I knew myself to be. I didn't know myself to be any other way. This was it. And so I went into academia and became a professor, and life had other plans for me, let's put it that way. I really needed to bring my attention to the feeling part of me, my heart, my soul. And for some reason, I wasn't meant to go on the path of managing and controlling intellectual, figuring things out for too long. I was getting very loud wake-up calls. As soon as I veered off the path, I would get a wake-up call.
You were like a magnet pulling you back almost.
Exactly.
But you
I
were
know
young.
that people can really, they can feel that magnet. It's like a little voice inside, right?
Inner wisdom,
yes,
sort of. Yeah.
Exactly, inner guidance, and just a little voice that speaks to you and says, hey, listen to me, I have something for you. Something that might be a little scary, but it's actually more who you are than anything you've experienced before.
And don't you think, whether in the big things like you're describing or in the small things, when we ignore that voice, it's at our own peril?
Yes.
You know, and I'll so often see that if something has happened, and I'll look back and go, oh, that was my, you know, something has gone awry, sort of. You look back and go, oh, that little thing when I thought, oh, I shouldn't do that, or, you know, what if, that was my inner guidance system telling me, or, you know, intuition, instinct. But I think we all can really hone in and tune it in.
Yes.
You know, I always say at the end of my letters that I've been sending out to ask my subscribers to hang in there until I actually launch the Soul Booth, stay tuned. And for me, being tuned means that I'm much more be than I am do.
Exactly.
So let's talk about that whole be, feel, think, do.
Well, just to kind of add to what you just said about the attunement, I know that our body is the instrument that our soul chose for this human adventure. So attuning it to its best capacity will help us connect with that intuition and that inner guidance and that little voice inside of us. So I love seeing the body as an instrument that we attune. And instead of just listening to the mind chatter and the logical, common sense part of us, can we listen to something else deeper inside ourselves? Can we listen to the twinge in our heart or the stir in our belly? Becoming more aware of the communication that our body has. So be, feel, think, do. We engage our moment to moment. Most of us do, think, feel, be.
We're doing all the time.
Yes.
Yeah.
We just go. We think quite a bit. They say we have about 70,000 thoughts a day. And the unfortunate news is that 90% of them are recycled from the day before. So not a lot of our thoughts are actually creative and new.
And if you're like me, those thoughts are like they're in a blender. And, you know, it's just going all the time.
It's noisy. It's very noisy. So then when you bring it to feel, we don't love that. It doesn't feel great to fully feel because it's uncomfortable. And a lot of us feel like if we really feel, maybe we'll never come out of that space. It's scary.
We've talked about that, and I love this because Anne said something one day to me that we were driving in a car and we were having this great soulful conversation, and she said, you know, I always say to my clients, because she's a spiritual coach, when was the last time you cried until you were done? And I was driving and I was like, wow, I better keep my hands on the wheel because that was such an amazing concept.
Yeah.
When was the last time you cried until you were done? Because we stifle it. We cry, we might feel a big wave of emotion, but then we just shut it down.
We do.
And I said to you that there was a friend of mine who once said to me, I'm afraid. I said, you just need a good cry. And she said, I'm terrified that if I go into that dark hole, I'm never coming out. And then we had a wonderful revelation, brilliant, I would even say, genius revelation, which was
that it's actually not a black hole, but it's a tunnel. And there's a light at the end of the tunnel.
Love it.
So can we trust that if we surrender to those tears and allow ourselves to cry until we're done? Because if you think of it, since we were little girls or little boys, we didn't cry until we were completely done. And so we will stop, but we have to give ourselves that space and permission to just feel what's inside our hearts, what's inside our chest and our throat, and feeling the intensity in our bodies. And there is always a light at the end. And I know that that's a fear that a lot of clients have, especially the ones who battle depression. But there's nothing better than fully feeling that desperation with someone who you trust and someone who can hold that space until you're done. So then the other question is, when was the last time you were there for someone until they were done? Until they felt like they've been heard and seen all the way through. So that might be the role of a supporter or healer or a coach, but
instead of inserting your ideas and your solutions, that's a really wonderful question.
So just being there, holding the space, because often we don't want a solution. We want to just hear ourselves out loud, validate to ourselves that this is how it feels right now. This is exactly how it feels right now. But our loved ones, I mean, they do the best they can and they want to find solutions. So it's really about redefining how we can be there for each other. in the relationships we have.
Okay, so we're still on feel. We're still on feel, and I just
Yes.
want to ask one quick question, or I guess it's sort of a statement. I love the idea that what you do with your coaching is you help people sort of exorcise, if you will, or get out of their physical body emotion that's trapped in there. And it can be from long ago. And
Yes.
you could access a memory. And we've done a session together, and I was shocked I felt like I left so much baggage. I left more baggage in your workspace on the couch there than I knew I had. And it was such a light feeling and it's like it's locked in our cells, sort of.
Exactly, and that's the difference between this approach, this epigenetics approach, compared to a traditional therapeutic approach where it's talk therapy, and we can talk about the same story for 10 years in talk therapy. But this approach that I use is really about, can we identify where the memory of the trauma, and we all have traumas and they are on the spectrum, where does the trauma live in the body?
And that's epigenetics?
Yes, it is. So it's the work of Candace Perth and Bruce Lipton, and it's about the fact that the memories live in the cells of the body. And so our thoughts and our fears actually have their roots in the cells of the body. So with our breath and our attention, we can access that information, and in a breath, in a moment, we can let go and release years and years of baggage. And I was dealing with chronic pain for a couple years after my son was born, and that's how it went away. It wasn't, antibiotics or different kinds of treatments, and I looked at all.
Although you tried everything.
I tried everything, and it was the baggage that lived in my throat, the baggage that lived in my belly, all this emotional baggage that I didn't know I carried, but I was keeping at bay. And the thing, Nancy, is that, and this is from Bruce Lipton as well, is that when we keep the negative emotions and feelings at bay, we also keep the joy and the happiness and the peace that's available to us. We can't be selective.
So the lid, if you're keeping a lid on that well,
Exactly.
It's got both of those contained.
It does. So we are cheating ourselves from that beautiful peace and happiness that's available to us.
Bruce Lipton is the author of Biology of Belief. That's the book of his, I know.
Exactly. And Candace Perth is Molecules of Emotion.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's go to B. Let's be.
Yes, so when you bring your attention in your body and you come to a place of just simply being, with no reason, no goals, no plan, just being you in your body, with your breath, with your presence. It's a very different place, and it's a very different way of experiencing your moment to moment. It's more mystical. It's more magical. It's more textured.
And it's elusive for a lot of people.
It is.
It's not sitting quietly looking at Facebook.
It's not.
It's so far from that.
Yes, it's stillness.
Yeah.
And it's silence. And it's patience and a lot of love. But it's ironic, right? We're human beings, yet we don't spend a lot of time during our day just simply being.
Most of us are human doings.
Doings. Exactly.
I love that.
Exactly.
I think in order to really be, you need to be in love with yourself.
Yes.
And that is, I say it that way intentionally because it really sounds out there. But I think people, I'm sure a lot of people like me hear the phrase self-love and think, they sort of cringe.
Yes.
And yet it's exactly what we need most in our lives.
Absolutely, and it feels very counterintuitive, especially if we're mothers or supporters or healers or people who take care of other people. Like, how is that a good idea if I take care of myself first? But it really is an act of gratitude for the life that we have, Nancy. It's saying thank you for this opportunity to be alive and to value my entire being, my body, my emotions, my soul, my mind, all aspects of myself. So when we only like parts of ourselves, we live a fragmented life.
And that's what most of us do.
We're not whole. We
Yeah.
don't feel whole. We know we're not whole. And this practice of self-love is very important. And really, to access be, Nancy, we need to go into feel. It's hard to access the quiet and the stillness if we haven't allowed ourselves to fully feel the tension that lives in our body. The tension creates the noise. So it's hard to access that stillness if there's that tension. If we haven't exhaled fully into ourselves. And you've done some breath work, right? So I know that you know it takes a lot of courage to take that deep breath when there's a lot of tension in the body. But man, it's such a gift.
It can be transformative.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So a practice of self-love, in my mind, is a practice of self-reflection. So just looking at, how do I talk to myself? What is the tone of the dialogue in my mind? Am I kind? Am I judgmental to myself? Am I compassionate to myself? A lot of us, if we think about it, we're not very, very nice. When we mess up, we're probably meaner to ourselves up here than we are to our friends when they mess up.
Absolutely. But, I think we all move through the world thinking that we're the only ones who are like that. And the more I've read and the more I've heard people talk,
Yes.
the more I am compassionate with myself, because I realize, guess what? This is the human condition to some extent. And I'm not the only one who has, I can be so, in my career on TV, I could be so hard on myself. And I wouldn't focus on the things I did right. I was always focusing on, what mistake I had made. And I was setting myself up for more because that's where my focus was.
Exactly.
So, okay, so I love the idea that when if you find a way to be and then feel and then think and do, it informs how, being first informs how you feel, which informs how you then think, which then means that you're doing in a different way. You're moving through the world differently.
So the way that our thoughts are different when we be and feel first is that instead of being repetitive or controlled or managed, they're insightful and they're reflective. They're new. And the way our actions are different is that they're more spontaneous. It's what Deepak calls spontaneous right action. I don't have to really think in advance what I'm going to do. I can just act from that place of be, feel, and think.
And trust.
And trust, exactly, of this movement through my attuned body, right? So then there becomes this beautiful dance between my soul, my emotions, my feelings, my thoughts, my words, and my action. My actions. So there's one movement, one reality. How many of us live to reality? What's going on in here and how we live out there? How good would it feel if we could just be in one reality, one movement of energy?
I practiced that today, I want you to know, because I was madly finishing up the set, and I knew you were coming for this interview, and I was trying to get all sorts of little things done, and I caught myself and I thought, the old Nancy, or the old paradigm for me would have been to really start to ramp up the nervousness and be thinking in my head, okay, well, what are we going to talk about? And what if it's not done when they get here? And I just sort of went, no, you know what? I'm not going there at all. And I know that it'll all work out. And if the curtain's not up and my hair's not done, it does, doesn't matter. We'll find a way. It'll be fine. It'll be an adventure.
And here we are having a heart-to-heart conversation and connection, and it's way better than if the stress had taken over.
That's right.
And manage and control your outcomes, right?
Because in a way, I read recently the book Untethered Soul, The Untethered Soul, and it talks a lot about keeping your heart open, even through challenges and frustration. And the more you can do that, the more you keep your energy good.
Yes.
Anyway, I like that a lot, but I want to get back to be, feel, think, do. And is there any advice you can give people? Obviously, they can get your book when it comes out in May.
Yes,
Yay.
absolutely. May 9th, and you can pre-order it now. And the pre-orders are great because you get actually a free mini e-course on sustainable happiness when you pre-order it before May 9th. So it's available on Chapters, Indigo, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all of the bookstores online. And you also get a PDF with exercises to support you in your quest for sustainable happiness. And so, yes, that's exciting. And, you know, one thing I want to say about the practice of self-love is try this. Try looking at yourself in the mirror, into your own eyes, and take a few deep breaths and see if you can say to yourself, I love you.
That's a
I love
very
you.
hard practice to get used to.
Yes, but giving it a try will give you a sense of where you're at on that spectrum of self-love.
Well, here's a question for you, because I remember the first time I heard Louise Hay say that.
Yes.
In a book probably, or a podcast. And my reaction was to stiffen and think, that's ridiculous. And that reaction tells me a lot about where I was. You know, that I was very uncomfortable with that concept at all. Anyway, I think it's so exciting to watch you go through this process. I'm really looking forward to the book coming out, partly because you're my friend and I want you to have personal success, but frankly much more because I'm really excited about the world being able to share in your story and what you do, because you make people's lives better, and what a wonderful thing to do for a living.
Oh, thank you so much, Nancy. It feels so good to be seen by you, and you do the same. You make people feel very, very good, and you give them permission to just be. And this is what the Soul Booth is about. So I'm very excited and honored to be here, really.
Okay. Thank you, my friend.
I love you.
Anne Berubé, I love you too.